I read the first couple pages and felt hooked, but then I read the rest of the book. Hey guys, it's Katie, Girl About Library, and I'm here today to wrap up my September reading. It's time to recount all of the books that I read this past month, and it was kind of a mixed bag, to be honest. There were some disappointing reads, and there were also some really good reads, but it was mostly like, it's a lot of 3 stars, so. In the TBR video that I made at the beginning of the month, I said that I wanted to read We the Animals, Sea of Tranquility, Where the Crawdads Sing, Puddin, Little Flowers Everywhere. That was so Texas. How did that, it just comes out sometimes. Little Flowers Everywhere, The Lion That Held Us, and Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance. And I read 5 of those books, so pretty good. And 2 others that were a mood read and then also an author event. And I'll tell you all about it. Let's get into it. First up is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I had seen this book everywhere, between Bookstagram and BookTube, although mostly on Bookstagram. This book is beautiful, like the cover of it is beautiful, and so sometimes that's the reason why you see it everywhere, but I think in this book's case, or I know in this book's case, it's much deeper than that. I gave this book 4 stars, and I really enjoyed it. This book is a coming-of-age story. It follows main character Kaya, and the story begins when Kaya is pretty young. She's like 8 or 9, and all of her family has kind of abandoned her because her father is very abusive, just like level worst human being. Kaya lives with her father for like a year or so, but then he ends up wandering away too, and now Kaya is left to fend for herself, and she becomes this marsh girl where people in town don't really associate with her. She's kind of just seen as like an other, but she does develop many relationships and really like thrives in her own way in the marsh. There's so much to this story. Like, there's a murder mystery element, there's a lot of romance, but there's also like the really good like coming of age story for Kaya. And all of that just comes together so beautifully because of Delia Owens' writing. I would have given this book 5 stars were it not for the last 10% of the book that just felt off. It wrapped everything up really quickly, and it didn't even feel like the same person wrote the last like 25 pages as the previous 300. It was kind of weird. And while the ending of this book was just kind of meh, for the most part, I loved it and would highly recommend it. I also read Puddin by Julie Murphy. This is part 2. Part 1 was Dumplin', and loved it. Cannot wait for the movie to come out. So excited. The song that just released with Dolly Parton and Sia, speechless. So good. This book has 2 different points of view. One is a character from the last book. They're both characters from the last book, but one was more of a minor character than the other. But I wasn't paying attention when I started the book. It took me like 4 chapters to realize that it was actually 2 different perspectives. Yeah. I mean, like, once I got into the groove of it, the 2 voices were like really distinct, and I appreciated both of them. It tried to do too much, I think. 1, because of the multiple perspectives. 2, because it kind of had a weird like mixed message about friendship and girl infighting, and weight was also in there, and just like so much was put into this book. And it was also in Dumplin', but it just wasn't the same. I think if you read Dumplin', check out Puddin', but if you haven't read Dumplin', that's the priority. Next, I read I'd Rather Be Reading by Vogel because she had an author event here in Austin, Texas that I went to, and it was awesome. She is just so warm and has so much to say about books. If you're not familiar with Vogel, she has a podcast called What Should I Read Next? She has a blog called The Modern Mrs. Darcy. She's active on Instagram. She's definitely kind of like an adult fiction book presence, and I really enjoyed meeting her. I read her book, her most recent book, over 2 days, and it's very calm, it's very relaxing. It was a 3-star read for me as well. It didn't really kind of like bowl me over, but she shared some insightful comments about reading, and yeah, it was great to meet her. I mostly know her from her podcast that I listen to on occasion. I'm not great at listening to podcasts, but when I do, she is one that I listen to, and so I really enjoyed meeting her, and also just going to author events is so much fun. If there is one near you, I highly encourage you to go. Just being surrounded by other people who are excited about reading, excited to meet this author, it's just, it's the warm fuzzies, and it was a lot of fun. After that, I read We the Animals, and I picked this up because I saw the trailer for the movie and was kind of hooked. I read the first couple pages and felt hooked, but then I read the rest of the book. If you've seen the trailer, you'll know what I'm talking about, but it's kind of like a lot of independent trailers where it's like these little short clips of a story, and it's very intense and it's very emotional. And the book was just like that, only in book form. I never really felt connected to the characters. It was, you know, a story that gripped my attention for a fairly short amount of pages. I think this book is under 200 pages. I gave the book 3 stars. There was nothing like wrong with the story. It just, I wouldn't recommend it. It wasn't one that I was particularly impressed with. But I do like the author's writing. I think if the book had like a different approach, if it wasn't, it almost felt like a bunch of short stories. And so I think if it had come from a different approach, I probably would have enjoyed it more. I did enjoy elements of the author's writing though, and so I would pick up another book by this author, but this book was 3 stars for me. After that, I read The Sea of Tranquility, and I gave this book 2 stars. And I think this book is just like a really good lesson in the you can be really good friends with someone and not have the same reading taste as them. And it was okay. It was not a big deal. And I love that about Jade. Jade, Bedtime Bookworm, I will link her channel down below. She is like my booktube bestie. I love that girl. And I had heard her talking about this book on her channel, so I picked it up. And it was a 2-star read for me. But it was like, I think, a 4 or 5-star read for her. And so, for me, it just felt overly written. I can take it from some authors, it doesn't bother me. This one in particular, it did. One thing I wish that the book had addressed is that, plot. The book is about a teenage girl who has had something terrible happen to her. We're not exactly sure what that is. And as the book unfolds, she becomes friends with this kind of loner type guy who is at the high school that she goes to now that she has changed high schools since the traumatic event happened. She does not speak also. I don't know if I mentioned that. She is mute. And has chosen to be mute after what happened to her. And that was one of the things I took a small issue with. I have mixed feelings about that. Basically, she chooses to be mute in part because she does not want to have to tell the police, her parents, anyone what happened to her. She knows what happened. She remembers and she knows who did it. But at one point in the book, she makes it sound like she is not telling anyone because she wants to exact revenge on this person. And I didn't like that. I don't feel great about that. I just have very mixed feelings about choosing not to report crimes in the first place, but also choosing not to report because you are trying to exact some sort of revenge just felt especially uncomfortable for me. And so that is a minor like bugaboo with the plot. Mostly it was just the characters' voices and stuff didn't really resonate with me, but that is okay. Last but not least, I read The Line That Held Us, and this was a 4-star read for me, and I really enjoyed it. It was also a Book of the Month Club book, which I read, which is rare. Got a whole lot of them back there that I need to read, and so I'm slowly, very slowly, making progress through them. I buddy read this with Vicky at chapter 32. I will link her channel down below as well. That was very fun. I think this is a good book to buddy read because it's very fast and it's like escalates very quickly. I think Vicky sent me like a meme about that at some point because it was just like bam with this plot. As soon as you open this book, it is fast paced and you are in this story. The plot follows a man. He goes hunting, and while he is hunting on someone else's property, he shouldn't be there. He thinks he shoots a hog, but he actually shoots another guy. The guy who was shot, his brother, is not a dude you want to mess with. Like, he is going to exact revenge. And so his friend, he like tries to get his friend to help him to cover up the murder, and it gets dark. It gets dark and twisty so fast. But it also asks some like really important questions of the reader about like, you know, where their lines are. What are you willing to do for another person? Like really, when it comes down to it, would you give your life for another person? What are you willing to cover up for another person? It was just It was really, really good. And I think this is also a book that I would love to see like a movie adaptation of, because it was so intense that I could see it translating to the screen like really well. And that was it. That was my reading for the month of September. Let me know below if you have read any of these books, or the best book or worst book that you read in the month of September. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more bookish content. Have a great day.